It's no secret that the AAA video game market is in a really rough spot right now. Mass layoffs no matter how well a game does, a rush to replace as many humans as possible with AI, an underwhelming 9th generation of consoles compared to how impactful earlier generations were, games often feeling more like money generation products instead of, games that are meant to be played for the purpose of having fun. I could go on and on. In fact, I think this is the worst state that AAA gaming has ever been in. Individual companies have had some pretty severe missteps, and there have been better and worst years for AAA games as a whole, but I don't think it's ever gotten this bad before. It's because the current outlook on AAA games looks so bleak that I've had a question lingering in my mind for some time now, one pertaining to the possibility of AAA games experiencing a crash. I recognize this isn't a revolutionary thing to be discussing. Plenty of other people have asked and talked about this very question before. That being said, I still want to make this video and toss my hat into the ring. It's time for us to answer the question, will AAA games experience a crash in the near future? In order to establish some kind of reference point to get an idea of what we mean when we talk about a video game crash, we have to go back in time to 1983. This is the year that video games as we knew them came close to dying. There were 3 key factors that contributed to the video game crash of 1983: an abundance of consoles, an abundance of low-quality games, and competition from home computers. By 1983, there were so many possible consoles to pick from that it was hard for people to keep up. This picture from one of this video's sources used, Bugsplat's article on the video game crash of 1983, shows just how many consoles people could pick from back then. Being able to pick from a number of options for anything is nice, but if there are too many options, people will get so confused trying to figure out the exact differences between everything that they may just throw in the towel and not even buy anything at all. Things weren't much better regarding the games themselves. Because of how successful video games were back in the 1970s and early 1980s, there was a huge rush from everyone to start making games as they wanted their slice of profits from the video game pie. This effort from everyone was then bolstered thanks to the birth of the third-party developer business model. You see, Atari had a nasty habit of not crediting the people who made the games themselves. The Atari logo was plastered all over the consoles and games, but the names of the people who went through all of that blood, sweat, and tears to make those games happen, nowhere to be found. This ultimately led to some Atari employees leaving to create their own studio, Activision. Able to give proper credit where it's due to people, Activision began to make games for the Atari 2600. Atari, seeing this new studio consisting of people who had experience with their own gaming system, sued Activision claiming copyright and patent infringement. This lawsuit would go on until 1982, in which Atari effectively lost. Activision agreed to pay Atari royalties for the games that were made, but they weren't barred from continuing to make games for the system. This court decision told everyone, so long as you pay a little bit of money to a studio, you can get your games on their systems. So while yes, Atari did score a small win by collecting royalties on the games Activision made, in the long run they lost. Activision was allowed to continue publishing games on their rivals' hardware, and now everyone else could get in on the action for whatever system they wanted as long as they paid what amounted to a small fee. As a result, a huge influx of games would go on to flood home consoles. The problem was, a bunch of those games were bad. People were caught up in the novelty of making games and being able to use an established and well-trusted console to get those games off the ground. Because of that, people didn't stop to make sure the games were good first. Lastly, home computers were on the rise during this time. On top of being able to help people with work-related things, computers could also run games. It just made more sense for people to spend a couple hundred on a versatile home computer that could do a number of things instead of a video game console which could only do one thing. When people stopped buying video game consoles and the games themselves, this hit the industry hard. According to Bugsplat's article on this, video games were a $3.2 billion industry in 1983. In 1985, it was at $100 million. Tons of studios were forced to shut their doors, stores stopped selling video games, and while video games would have surely stuck around in some way thanks to things like arcades, in terms of video games that you could play within the comfort of your own home, it wasn't looking so good there. That is until Nintendo swept in and saved the day. By making the Nintendo Entertainment System and releasing a number of good first-party titles, Nintendo showed people that there was still a place for home console video games. People just needed to be more careful about, well, frankly everything moving forward. So, that was a crash course on the video game crash of 1983. Now that we have a reference point, I want to take another look at these contributing factors and see if the current AAA gaming market has any of this going on. I would say that this doesn't apply to the current state of AAA gaming. We have a pretty consistent big three when it comes to consoles: Microsoft and Xbox,
gaming,
Sony and PlayStation, and Nintendo, and Nintendo.
It also has 24-player Mario Kart.
A lot of ands in that sentence. So for consoles, people have options, but not so many of them that they'll get overwhelmed. With there being quality control measures in place to ensure that people can't just make games for systems with reckless abandon, the volume of AAA games hitting shelves, both physical and digital, aren't as severe. That being said, for a particular reason I'll get into later in the video, an abundance of low-quality games could become a problem again in the near future. Back in August last year, I finally got myself a desktop PC as a birthday gift for my family. Having used it daily for a little over 7 months as of this video, holy shit, I've been missing out all these years. Better graphics, higher frame rates, mod support, amazing emulation capabilities, all while I'm able to do a ton of non-gaming related things too, like video editing. Granted, I was able to do gaming on my consoles and Steam Deck and things like video editing on my laptop, but to have an all-in-one device is so nice. Having a PC has been so nice that I've been questioning whether or not I even want to buy the next Xbox and PlayStation consoles. I can see myself getting a Switch too, because Nintendo has enough exclusives in their own ecosystem to warrant such a thing, but Xbox and PlayStation feel more or less the same. Neither the Xbox Series X and S nor the PlayStation 5 really stand out to me. The features they provide are alright, but nothing that would have me craving to use them day in and day out. That makes me wonder what the next Xbox and PlayStation consoles could even provide at this point, besides better graphics and faster loading times. As desktop PCs become more and more accessible, consoles are going to need to really innovate in order to stay competitive. Of course, Xbox and PlayStation can increase their odds of console sales via things like exclusives, but if those exclusives make their way to other platforms, or if they just aren't that good or there aren't very many of them, people will have less of a reason to invest in a console, especially if they already have a desktop PC capable of so much more. This could make Xbox and PlayStation begin to sweat a little, since console sales are a huge part of their business model alongside games. Either that, or again, they'll need to provide some crazy out-of-the-blue innovations. What those out-of-the-blue innovations could be, I have no idea. So, while we may not be experiencing a huge abundance in home consoles, the volume of low-quality games could increase dramatically in the near future, and competition from PCs could affect console sales for companies like Microsoft through Xbox and Sony through PlayStation. However, there are more factors we need to look at in order to truly give an answer to the question of whether there will be a AAA gaming crash in the near future. It's no secret that a lot of AAA companies are greedy. While yes, the whole point of a business is to make money, the methods that these companies are willing to use to make that money has gotten questionable at best and deplorable at worst. No matter how well a video game does, it seems like people are at risk of being fired. Take Hi-Fi Rush for example. The studio behind it, Tango Gameworks, was shut down despite the game succeeding with flying colors across the board. This means that people in the AAA space have no incentive to pour their heart and soul into games. Think about it. You pour your heart and soul into a game. You take extra time to carefully design the characters if you're an artist, or make the music have that extra punch to it if you're a music composer, and the game does super well, but you still get fired. You could give less of a care in the world about a game. You know the game is going to be a critical and commercial flop, so you do the bare minimum that's required for your job. You get fired after the game comes out. Or maybe a particular game isn't the thing you're crazy about, but you still want to do a good job on it so people who are super crazy for it can enjoy it. You do a solid job, the game gets released, and you still get fired. I can't imagine how stressful this cycle is. You work on a game, the game gets released, then you hold your breath to see if you'll still have a job once it's out. Even if you're still employed and able to work on the next game, it's possible that some of your friends may not be so lucky, so you'll still be upset even if you do get to stay. For those of you who do YouTube and or Twitch stuff like I do, imagine that after every YouTube upload and or every Twitch stream you do, your channel is presented to a review board of some kind where you could either remain a part of the YouTube Partner Program and or Twitch Affiliate/Partner Program, or you get removed removed from those. And you could have had the best YouTube upload and or Twitch stream ever, and you could still, in theory, be kicked to the curb. I can't imagine how I would feel if I was in that spot. A constant cycle of wondering if I'll still have a job so I can pay my bills and put food on the table. I could never, ever see myself being a developer in the AAA space. If my reward for doing a good job on a game is to get fired, then I don't want any part of that. Ironically, for as many people that are being kicked out, it may be harder than one may think to get a job in the AAA gaming development space nowadays. That's because not only are those at the top fully willing to kick their current employees to the curb, they're also looking to fully replace as many humans in general as possible. Originally, I was going to begin this part of the video talking about how, for better or for worse, Pandora's box has been opened in regard to AI generation stuff. But there's no debate on whether it's for better or for worse. It's all been for worse. So many creative outlets have been poisoned by this shit, and you bet video game development is not being spared. Companies like EA have fully embraced generative AI, looking to replace as many humans as possible in the development process. Activision has been caught in 4K creating fake game advertisements using generative AI art. And as tempting as it is for indie developers to do this because of financial constraints when making games, using things like AI, voice acting, and music contributes to the normalization of this all, which in turn gives AAA companies more leeway because people are already being exposed to this in the indie scene anyway. Make no mistake, while it's not possible as of right now, if it ever becomes possible to fully make a video game exclusively with generative AI, then the AAA video game market will come crashing down. The same issue of tons of crappy games flooding stores will happen again, except this time it'll be due to AI pumping out soulless cash grab after soulless cash grab. And with multiple AAA companies pumping out these soulless cash grabs at once, consumers will be flooded with tons of games they won't want to play, which in turn will mean publishers and developers won't make their money back, which could result in studios closing their doors and video games not having that spark to them anymore. The only place that gaming will have a chance if this ever happens is with the indie scene. Just bear with me for a second here. I know I just mentioned the use of AI for indie games because of things like financial constraints, but this is also where creativity for games is allowed to flourish. The indie scene isn't perfect by any means. There have been and will continue to be cash grabs, broken promises, AI slop, and greed that can rival AAA companies. But at least gaming has a chance here. With indie titles, developers aren't at the mercy of shareholders who want profits above all else. Rather than the focus being about the money, the focus for a number of indie games is simply for the experience to be fun. Of course, developers need to make money to pay their teams along with keeping the lights on and putting food on the table. But I would like to think they're not doing this for the sole purpose of becoming rich. Speaking on my own experiences in game development, you need to have a genuine interest in it. If you go into game development just for the money, you're gonna burn yourself out and quit very early on. Taking all of these factors into account, do I think a AAA gaming crash will happen in the near future? If things keep going the way they are, yes, I do think a crash is bound to happen. Organizing the list of factors from most severe to least severe, aka the factors that I think would contribute to this crash versus the factors that wouldn't, number 1, AI and greed. Without a shadow of a doubt, AI and greed are the two factors that would be the largest contributors towards a AAA gaming crash. I know I listed these two factors separately earlier, but after going back and forth on which would be number 1, I decided to combine them both here. When you think about it, both of these are integral to one another. AI for the technology even existing in the first place, and greed that drives people to use it for nefarious purposes. Because of these two factors, those at the top will do everything in their power to eliminate as many jobs as possible to increase their bottom line. With AI, those at the top don't need to pay employees. They may need to pay for monthly or yearly memberships to AI programs, but that would be less financially costly for them compared to paying people's wages. Or rather, let me rephrase that, paying people what they are owed for their work. Not only would the AAA games industry be in shambles as employment would take a nosedive, if it's not already taking a nosedive that is, every single AAA game would be void of creativity, passion, and love. In conjunction with the AI part for the first reason listed, an abundance of low-quality games could drive people to not even bother with them moving forward. Originally, I had this point lower on the list because of YouTube and Twitch allowing for people to have a laugh at bad games. However, I did some more thinking, and if this were to happen, the whole, haha, look at how awful this game is because it was all made by AI response would go from funny to just sad after a while. We'd only be able to laugh at how someone grows a sixth finger or how their face morphs into something else entirely for so long before it would stop being funny. economy. After one too many low-quality games, people would become so overwhelmed by them all that they'd be burnt out and eventually lose interest. Because why would you stay interested in a form of entertainment if all that comes from it is slop? Because indie games aren't at the mercy of corporate overlords and shareholders, genuine love and passion has more of a say in the development process. Because of this, an increase in indie game sales along with a decrease in AAA game sales is a very possible outcome. While there will be indie devs who fall to the dark side, in fact some have done so already in both small and large ways, I would like to hope that they represent the minority. Or at the very least, they're going to minimize the use of AI during their first couple of games, and then when they start getting funding and or realize this is something they want to pursue as a career, they'll hire actual talent. I do empathize with the financial constraints people may face when developing a game, but I would personally rather wait to save enough to hire someone to make the end product better instead of, again, falling to the dark side to get something out there earlier. While I don't think this factor by itself would result in a AAA gaming crash, I do think this could play a part in seeing the gradual decline of companies like Xbox and PlayStation. Of course, people may not have enough money or even a desire to own a desktop PC for one reason or another, and so a video game console is a solid alternative. But as PCs gradually become more accessible, more and more people may be willing to choose them over consoles. I think that consoles will always have a place in the video game world in some way, but in terms of competing with PCs, consoles are running out of options and time if they want to continue to see sales increase rather than decrease. No way this would cause a crash, because it's not gonna happen. Unless something insane happens where new large corporations suddenly try to enter the picture, we'll be sticking with the big three and any handhelds for the foreseeable future. Something I haven't said yet is specifically when I think this crash will happen. The time for me to give that prediction is now. Gather round, everyone. If things continue the way they are for the foreseeable future, I predict that there will be a AAA gaming crash in the next 5 to 10 years. Things could change and a AAA gaming crash never happens. Things could change and a AAA gaming crash happens earlier than 2030. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, do I want a AAA gaming crash to occur? No. While it would be amazing to see companies like Electronic Arts and Activision lose millions of dollars or declare bankruptcy altogether, I also don't want to actively root for people to lose their jobs. At the same time though, it's one of those things where if these companies are going to lay off as many people as possible and full send it on profits and shit like AI anyway, it may be the thing that needs to happen to these companies in order to give AAA gaming a chance to heal. Oh, and if I'm wrong and a AAA gaming crash doesn't happen by 2040, nothing will happen. I'll just be wrong.